My name is Ryan Mitchell, and for years, I believed that being a loyal husband and working hard would be enough to build a happy life. I wasn't rich. I wasn't flashy. I worked as a maintenance manager for a local manufacturing company, often putting in 10-hour shifts. Every paycheck went toward our mortgage, bills, and savings. My wife, Natalie Cooper, used to tell me she loved that I was dependable. I believed her. Our next-door neighbor, Logan Pierce, was the complete opposite of me. He drove a brand-new luxury SUV, wore tailored suits even on weekends, and somehow found a way to mention money in every conversation. Every few months he showed off another expensive purchase or bragged about another successful investment. Whenever he saw me, he'd smile like we were friends. "Morning, Ryan. Still driving that old truck? It still runs." He laughed. "Some people settle for good enough their entire lives." I ignored him. I had no interest in proving anything to a man who seemed addicted to showing off. Then I started noticing something. Whenever I got home early, Logan's SUV was parked outside my house. The first time, Natalie smiled. "He helped me move the new washing machine." The second time, "He stopped by to borrow a ladder." The third time, "We were just talking over coffee." I wanted to believe her. After all, we'd been married for 8 years. But something had changed. Natalie suddenly became obsessed with expensive vacations, designer handbags, and luxury homes. One evening she looked at pictures on her phone and sighed. "Logan just bought a lake house. That's nice for him." She looked at me with disappointment. "Don't you ever want more?" "I work hard every day." "Working hard isn't the same as becoming successful." That sentence echoed in my mind for days. A week later, I was taking the trash out when Logan walked over, holding a cup of coffee. He looked at my truck and smirked. "You know what your biggest problem is, Ryan?" I didn't answer. "You're comfortable being average." "I'm comfortable being honest." He chuckled. "Honesty doesn't impress women." I stared at him. "What are you trying to say?" He stepped closer. "A woman wants a man she can look up to. Someone who's winning. Not someone who's stuck in the same job year after year." I clenched my jaw. "My marriage is none of your business." He shrugged. "Maybe." "But if I were you, I'd start worrying." "Worry about what?" He smiled. "The day Natalie realizes she's married to a man with no future." He walked away laughing. I stood there trying to calm myself before walking inside. Natalie was sitting on the couch. Without even looking up from her phone, she quietly said, "Maybe Logan has a point." I wish I could say I ignored what Natalie said that night. I couldn't. For weeks, the atmosphere in our house became unbearable. Every conversation turned into an argument. "You never want more," she complained while setting her coffee mug on the counter. "I want stability." "I don't want stability anymore. I want a better life." I looked at her, confused. "Everything we've built together, doesn't that matter?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked away. The following Friday, I came home an hour earlier than usual because one of our machines had broken down, ending my shift early. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Logan's SUV parked in front of my house. Again. This time, something felt different. The curtains in the living room were closed. My heart started pounding. I quietly unlocked the front door. The house was silent except for voices upstairs. I climbed the stairs one step at a time. Then I heard laughter. Natalie's laughter, followed by Logan's. I froze outside our bedroom. The door wasn't completely closed. When I pushed it open, both of them turned toward me. Neither of them looked surprised. Natalie slowly stood up. "I guess you weren't supposed to be home yet." For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Logan adjusted his shirt and smiled. "I think it's time you knew." I looked at my wife. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like," she sighed. "It is." Those two words shattered 8 years of marriage. I expected tears, apologies, regret. Instead, Natalie crossed her arms. "I've been unhappy for a long time." "So you cheated?" "I found someone who actually has ambition." Logan laughed quietly. "I told you she'd eventually see the truth." I turned toward him. "You've been coming into my house for months." "So?" I wanted to hit him. Instead, I looked back at Natalie. "Was any of it real?" She didn't hesitate. "I loved who I thought you'd become." The words hurt more than finding them together. She grabbed a suitcase from the closet. "I'm leaving." "Today?" "Yes." "With him?" She nodded. Logan picked up her bags as if he'd been planning this for weeks. Before walking out, he stopped beside me. "You know what your biggest mistake was?" I stared at him. "You were satisfied with being ordinary." Then they walked past me together. From the living room window, I watched Natalie get into his SUV without looking back. The taillights disappeared down the street. Just like that, my marriage was over. The divorce papers arrived 3 weeks later. Natalie didn't ask for counseling. She didn't ask for another chance. She only wanted the house sold so she could take half the equity. I signed every document without a fight. The day I moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment, I had just $4,800 left in my bank account. Sitting alone on the floor with nothing but a mattress and a few boxes, I made myself one promise. I would never let anyone call me a failure again. The first few months after the divorce were the hardest of my life. Every morning I woke up in a tiny apartment that barely felt like home. There was no furniture except a second-hand table, an old mattress, and a coffee maker I had bought at a thrift store. Friends stopped calling. Some of them had chosen Natalie's side. Others simply disappeared. Meanwhile, I occasionally saw pictures on social media. Natalie and Logan on a yacht. Natalie wearing designer jewelry. Weekend trips to Miami. Luxury restaurants. She looked happier than I'd ever seen her. For a moment, I questioned everything. Maybe they had been right. Maybe I really was a failure. One evening my supervisor, Mr. Harrison, called me into his office. "I've been watching you," he said. I assumed I was in trouble. Instead, he smiled. "You're the hardest working employee in this company." "Thank you. Have you ever thought about starting your own business?" I laughed. "With what money?" He leaned back. "You know maintenance, industrial equipment, and factory operations better than most people. Companies pay a fortune when their production lines stop." That conversation stayed with me for days. I started researching industrial maintenance services. I realized hundreds of factories outsourced emergency repairs because they couldn't afford downtime. Every hour a production line stopped could cost thousands of dollars. An idea began to grow. I spent every evening studying business plans, watching online courses, and learning everything I could about running a company. I stopped wasting time feeling sorry for myself. 6 months later, I emptied my savings. Every dollar. I bought a used service van, basic tools, insurance, and registered my own business. The first month, I earned almost nothing. The second month, I landed one small contract. The third month, that client recommended me to another factory. Then another. Soon I wasn't sleeping much. During the day, I repaired machines. At night, I handled invoices, answered emails, and searched for new clients. There were moments I wanted to quit. Sometimes, I worked 16 hours straight. Sometimes I ate dinner in the driver's seat of my van. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered Logan's voice. "You're a nobody." Those words became fuel. Within 18 months, I hired my first employee. 3 months later, a second. Then a third. Our reputation spread because we always showed up when other companies didn't. Factories trusted us. Clients kept returning. One afternoon, I drove past my old neighborhood. Logan's SUV was still parked outside. Natalie was watering flowers in the front yard. She looked up just long enough to recognize my company logo on the side of my new service truck. Her smile disappeared. I kept driving. For the first time since the divorce, I didn't feel angry anymore. I was too busy building a future they never believed I could have. 2 years passed faster than I ever imagined. The small business I had started with one used van had grown into one of the fastest growing industrial maintenance companies in the state. We now had 23 employees, a fleet of service trucks, and contracts with several large manufacturing plants. The company that had once employed me eventually became one of our biggest clients. Life had completely changed. I moved into a modern home, paid off every debt, and finally stopped worrying every time I checked my bank account. Money was no longer my goal. Building something meaningful was. One Monday morning, my HR manager, Linda, knocked on my office door. "We have interviews scheduled today." I nodded without looking up from my laptop. "Anything interesting?" "Actually, yes." She hesitated. "One couple applied together." "Together?" "They're both looking for management positions." I shrugged. "If they're qualified, interview them." She handed me the resumes. The moment I read the names, my heart stopped. Natalie Cooper. Logan Pierce. For a few seconds, I simply stared at the paper. Logan's construction company had gone bankrupt 6 months earlier. Natalie had been working there. Now both of them were unemployed. I leaned back in my chair. Life had a strange sense of humor. Should I cancel? Linda asked carefully. I looked through the glass wall of my office. Employees walked confidently through the building wearing uniforms with my company logo. Everything around me existed because I refused to quit. "No," I finally said. "Bring them in." 10 minutes later, someone knocked. "Come in." The door opened. Natalie walked in first. Logan followed behind her. Neither of them recognized me immediately. Their eyes were fixed on the office. The floor-to-ceiling windows. The awards. The company logo behind my desk. Then Natalie looked at me. Her face turned completely pale. Logan froze. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, I smiled politely. "Good morning." Natalie whispered my name. "Ryan." Logan looked like he wanted to disappear. I stood and offered them both a handshake. "Please, have a seat." Neither of them moved. Natalie kept staring at me as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "You own this company?" she asked quietly. "I do." Logan swallowed hard. "I didn't know." "I know." The room became painfully silent. The same man who had once laughed at my old truck, the same woman who said I had no future, were now standing in my office asking me for jobs. Neither of them sat down until I pointed to the chairs a second time. Natalie kept avoiding my eyes. Logan tried to look confident, but I could see the nervousness in his face. I opened their resumes. "So," I said calmly, "tell me why you want to work here." Logan cleared his throat. "My previous business failed because of the economy." I nodded. "I see," he quickly continued. "But I have years of management experience." I looked at him. "According to your resume, your company filed for bankruptcy." His confidence faded. "It wasn't entirely my fault." I made a note on the paper. Then I turned to Natalie. "And you?" She spoke quietly. "I handled administration and customer relations." "You left after the company closed?" Yes. Another silence filled the room. Finally, Natalie looked at me. I never imagined. I finished her sentence. That I'd be sitting in this office? She slowly nodded. I heard your company had grown, but I didn't know you were the owner. I smiled politely. Life can be unpredictable. Logan shifted in his chair. We know this is awkward. It doesn't have to be. He looked surprised. I judge applicants by their qualifications, not by personal history. For the first time, both of them relaxed. Then I closed their resumes. However, their expressions changed immediately. I have one question. They both looked at me. 2 years ago, what did you think my future would look like? Nobody answered. I looked at Logan. You once told me I was a nobody. He lowered his head. I remember. You also said I'd never become successful. I was wrong. I turned toward Natalie. And you told me I had no future. Tears began forming in her eyes. I know. I leaned back in my chair. The funny thing is, neither of them spoke. The day you both walked out of my life was the day I finally started building it. The room fell silent again. Natalie quietly wiped away a tear. I'm sorry, Ryan. It was the first genuine apology I had ever heard from her. I've regretted everything. Logan looked at me. So, do we have a chance? I looked out the window for several seconds before answering. When I built this company, I promised myself something. They waited. I would only hire people I could completely trust. Neither of them said another word. They already knew what my answer was going to be. I folded both resumes and placed them on my desk. I appreciate that you came here, I said, and I appreciate your honesty today. Natalie looked at me with hope. Logan barely breathed. But this company was built on trust. I paused. And trust is something you can't list on a resume. Neither of them spoke. I can't hire people who knowingly betrayed someone they claim to care about. My employees depend on each other every single day. Character matters here just as much as experience. Natalie's eyes filled with tears. I understand. Logan lowered his head. I deserve that. For the first time since I had met him, there wasn't a trace of arrogance in his voice. He looked defeated. I stood and extended my hand. I truly hope both of you find a place where you can start over. Logan shook my hand first. I'm sorry for everything I said back then. I nodded. I accept your apology. Natalie stepped forward next. I never stopped thinking about what I threw away. I gave her a small, respectful smile. I hope you find peace. She seemed to want to say something else, but no words came out. They quietly walked toward the door. Before leaving, Logan turned around. You won, Ryan. I shook my head. This was never a competition. They left without another word. Through the office window, I watched them cross the parking lot together. Their old luxury SUV was gone. They drove away in an aging sedan that had clearly seen better days. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel revenge. Only closure. Linda stepped into my office a few moments later. So, how did it go? They weren't the right fit. She nodded. I figured. That afternoon, I interviewed another candidate, a young veteran who had recently lost his job after his employer shut down. He didn't have the strongest resume. But he spoke honestly. He admitted what he didn't know. He was eager to learn. By the end of the interview, I hired him. As he thanked me, I remembered something Mr. Harrison had once told me. Skills can be taught. Character can't. Looking around my office, I realized success had never been about proving Natalie or Logan wrong. It was about becoming the man I had always wanted to be. And this time, no one could take that away from me. I thought that was the last time I would ever see Natalie and Logan. I was wrong. About a month later, I was leaving the office after a long day when I noticed someone standing near my truck. It was Natalie. She looked nothing like the woman who had walked away from me 2 years earlier. The confidence was gone. "So, you waited for me?" I asked. She nodded. "I just wanted 5 minutes." I glanced at my watch. "You have them." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. "I wasn't happy with Logan." I didn't respond. At first, everything seemed perfect. The trips, the money, the expensive dinners. She looked down. But after his business started failing, everything changed. How? He became angry all the time. We argued constantly. The man who always acted so confident completely fell apart. I simply listened. Then she looked at me. I finally understood what I had lost. I sighed. "You're not here because you miss me." Her eyes widened. "You're here because the life you chose didn't turn out the way you expected." She didn't deny it. A tear rolled down her cheek. "I know I don't deserve another chance." "No," I answered honestly. "You don't." She nodded as if she'd expected those words. "I just wanted you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." I smiled, not with bitterness, but with peace. "If that's true, then learn from it." She looked at me one last time. "You've completely changed." I shook my head. "No, I don't understand. I was always this man." I placed my hand on my truck door. "The difference is..." I finally believed in myself. She quietly wiped away another tear. "I'm sorry, Ryan." "I know." Then she turned around and slowly walked toward the parking lot. I watched her leave. This time, I didn't feel heartbreak. I didn't wonder what I could have done differently. Some chapters aren't meant to be rewritten. They're meant to be closed. As I drove home, my phone rang. It was Linda. "We just signed the contract." I smiled. "The Chicago plant?" "Yes. It's our biggest client yet." I thanked her and hung up. 2 years earlier, I had been sitting alone on the floor of a tiny apartment, wondering if my life was over. Now, I was driving toward a future I had built with my own hands. Not because someone believed in me, because I finally believed in myself. A year later, our company had grown beyond anything I had imagined. We had more than 60 employees, offices in 3 cities, and contracts with some of the largest manufacturers in the region. The business that started with one old service truck had become something I was genuinely proud of. But the achievement I valued most wasn't the money. It was the culture. Every new employee heard the same message from me on their first day. Treat people with respect. You never know who they'll become, or who you'll become. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at a local business conference. The room was filled with young entrepreneurs, business owners, and students hoping to build successful careers. During the Q&A session, a young man stood up. "What motivated you to succeed?" The audience became quiet. I smiled. "For a long time, I thought I was trying to prove someone wrong." I paused. "But eventually I realized that revenge is a terrible business plan." A few people laughed. "The real motivation came when I stopped asking, 'How do I prove them wrong?' and started asking, 'How do I become the best version of myself?'" The audience applauded. After the event ended, I walked toward the parking lot. As I passed a nearby cafe, I noticed 2 familiar faces sitting by the window. Natalie and Logan. They saw me too. For a brief moment, our eyes met. Logan gave me a small nod. I returned it. Natalie offered a faint smile. I smiled back politely. Then I kept walking. There was no anger left. No resentment. No desire to make them feel worse than life already had. The greatest victory wasn't becoming richer than the man who mocked me. It wasn't owning the company where they had once asked for jobs. It wasn't watching karma catch up with them. The greatest victory was waking up every morning without hatred in my heart. As I unlocked my truck, my phone buzzed with a message from Linda. "Congratulations, boss. We officially became the highest-rated industrial maintenance company in the state." I looked at the message for a moment before putting my phone away. 2 years earlier, my neighbor had looked me in the eyes and called me a nobody. My wife believed him. They walked away convinced my future was already written. They were wrong. The best chapters of my life didn't begin after I became successful. They began the day I stopped letting other people decide what I was worth. Sometimes the people who leave your life aren't your greatest loss. They're simply making room for the future you were always meant to build.